Exceptions can take several forms, and recognizing which category you're dealing with determines how you respond. A design deficiency means the control itself was not properly constructed to achieve its objective. Perhaps it lacked segregation of duties or automated validation. An operating deficiency occurs when a well-designed control fails in practice, such as when quarterly access reviews were skipped or performed late. An evidence deficiency reflects missing, incomplete, or unverifiable proof that the control operated as stated. Finally, a timing deficiency arises when a control runs outside its required window, for example, a daily log review performed only weekly. Understanding the type of exception ensures that remediation targets the real root cause rather than superficial symptoms. Severity and materiality classification follow immediately after detection. Not all exceptions are equal. A single late review may be minor, while recurring failures in identity management could be material. Use a structured risk model to classify issues as low, medium, or high based on potential impact to customer commitments, regulatory exposure, and the integrity of audit results. High-severity exceptions require leadership attention and, in some cases, board visibility. Material exceptions can influence the auditor's opinion, shifting it from an unmodified to a qualified or adverse conclusion. Treating materiality as both a technical and reputational measure ensures that decisions about escalation and remediation reflect the true gravity of the deviation. Exception detection happens through multiple channels. Internal readiness assessments or second-line control testing often catch issues early. During fieldwork, auditors may identify exceptions through sampling, walkthroughs, or incomplete evidence submissions. Control owners themselves may discover issues while performing operations or responding to incidents. Automated monitoring systems can also flag missed executions or anomalies. What distinguishes mature organizations is not the absence of exceptions, but the speed and rigor of triage once they surface. Every finding should trigger immediate root cause analysis, ownership assignment, and remediation planning, preventing small errors from snowballing into systemic weaknesses. Root cause analysis, or RCA, transforms discovery into understanding. Each exception should be examined for whether it originated from process breakdown, system malfunction, or human error. Determining recurrence likelihood helps define whether the issue is isolated or symptomatic of deeper control design flaws. Document evidence of the RCA itself, meeting notes, screenshots, or logs demonstrating investigation steps, and assign an owner for corrective and preventative actions. Prevention measures might include automation, new alerts, or enhanced training. A complete RCA answers 3 questions: what happened, why it happened, and how it will be prevented from happening again. Consistency in documentation turns exception management into an auditable process. Use a standardized template capturing the control ID, control description, exception type, discovery date, and impact statement linked to relevant trust services criteria. Include an action plan with target completion dates and named responsible parties. Every entry should contain closure verification steps and space for auditor review notes. Uniform templates across domains prevent confusion and allow auditors to trace progress easily. Structured documentation also supports trend analysis, enabling leaders to identify recurring themes like weak evidence practices or procedural drift that warrant broader remediation. Communication with auditors about exceptions must be prompt, factual, and transparent. Disclose the issue as soon as it is verified, not after remediation. Provide a concise summary of what occurred, how it was detected, and what immediate steps were taken to contain the risk. Offer your remediation or compensating control plan and ask auditors for preliminary feedback on sufficiency. Record all exchanges, emails, meeting minutes, and follow-up notes in your audit log for traceability. Openness earns credibility. Auditors expect imperfections, but they value candor and proactive cooperation over concealment. Compensating controls can mitigate the impact of exceptions when they achieve the same objective by alternate means. For example, if a quarterly access review was delayed, a subsequent independent verification of access rights might serve as compensating assurance. To be valid, compensating controls must operate during the same period and provide equivalent effectiveness. Supply supporting evidence, logs, tickets, or dashboards that demonstrate the alternate control functioned as described. The auditor must validate and approve compensating controls before relying on them in the final opinion. Properly designed compensations can prevent isolated deviations from escalating into opinion-modifying deficiencies. Distinguishing between exceptions and incidents clarifies accountability. An exception is a control failure. An incident is a security or operational event that could, in turn, reveal an exception. For instance, a breach might expose that monitoring controls failed to detect alerts. Both require documentation discipline but follow different remediation tracks. Exceptions focus on control improvement, while incidents address risk response. Ensure both are logged and correlated so metrics can capture interdependencies, how many incidents were tied to control weaknesses, and how often those controls have since been corrected. Every exception follows a remediation lifecycle. Log the issue in your ticketing or GRC platform with unique identifiers. Develop corrective actions addressing the immediate failure and preventative actions aimed at long-term stability. Verification should include independent QA testing or audit team confirmation. Archive closure evidence with timestamps, emails, tickets, or updated logs, and label it clearly for auditor review. Maintaining these records creates continuity across audit cycles and demonstrates that issues are handled systematically, not ad hoc. Trend and metric tracking turns exceptions into learning tools. Track the number of exceptions per control domain, the average remediation time, and the recurrence rate from one audit cycle to the next. Monitor how many exceptions are resolved before the final report cutoff date. Display these statistics in leadership dashboards, highlighting improvement trajectories. These insights guide resource allocation and training investments. If one domain consistently generates exceptions, it likely requires structural reform, not just patch fixes. Management representation closes the loop between exception handling and attestation. Before final reporting, management must summarize all known deviations in the representation letter provided to the auditor. This statement confirms completeness, transparency, and alignment with auditor feedback on closure sufficiency. Leadership should review and sign these records formally. This final attestation demonstrates ownership at the highest level, reinforcing that exceptions are treated as shared accountability, not isolated technical issues. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Once exceptions are disclosed, the auditor begins an independent evaluation to determine severity and scope. Their job is to assess whether the deviation affects the reliability of the overall control set or the fairness of management's assertion. Minor, well-documented deviations may be noted without changing the audit opinion, while systemic or high-risk exceptions can lead to a qualified or modified report. The auditor also verifies the adequacy of any remediation or compensating controls you've implemented, ensuring they meet SOC 2's principles of sufficiency and operating effectiveness. Every decision is recorded in the auditor's work papers, providing a defensible rationale for the opinion issued. Maintaining open dialogue throughout this process prevents surprises in the final report and ensures your organization understands how each deviation is interpreted. Testing remediated controls within the same audit period, when feasible, demonstrates responsiveness and improvement. If a gap was closed early enough, auditors can resample and test the updated control to confirm consistent execution. Document before and after comparisons showing how procedures, configurations, or frequencies changed. Capture fresh evidence that meets the sufficiency and timestamp requirements of the audit window. When retests pass, they serve as powerful proof of continuous improvement, transforming potential weaknesses into success stories. If a retest isn't possible, retain closure documentation for the next audit cycle and include the remediation plan in management's assertion letter. The post-audit lessons learned stage turns exceptions into catalysts for long-term maturity. Once the final report is issued, gather all findings and observations into an improvement backlog. Analyze systemic themes, recurring evidence gaps, training deficiencies, or process bottlenecks, and prioritize these for correction in your compliance roadmap. Schedule mid-year validations of remediated controls to ensure that fixes remain effective. Feed the insights back into readiness assessments, control narratives, and automation initiatives. In a mature program, every exception becomes input for program evolution rather than a blemish on an otherwise positive report. Automation and prevention mechanisms help detect and avoid deviations before they affect controls. Integrate alerts that flag missed executions or delayed approvals, ensuring timely intervention. Automate evidence collection wherever possible, scripts, APIs, or monitoring systems that capture logs and screenshots on schedule, so control operation proof exists by default. Validate logs daily to detect anomalies, such as skipped backups or failed reviews. Dashboards aggregating control health data can provide early warnings for controls trending toward non-compliance. Preventive automation moves exception management from reactive correction to predictive assurance, where potential failures are identified and resolved before auditors ever notice them. Escalation governance ensures exceptions are handled proportionately to their risk. Define clear criteria for when an issue must be escalated to executive leadership or the board. For example, any deviation affecting customer commitments, regulatory requirements, or major control areas. Maintain an escalation matrix showing responsible contacts by risk tier, so reporting paths are clear. Create a tracking dashboard visible to compliance and leadership teams showing open exceptions, remediation progress, and deadlines. Final closure verification should occur through a governance committee or audit steering group, ensuring accountability at the highest level and reinforcing the seriousness of exception management. Auditors expect clear, complete evidence to support exception handling. Maintain logs listing each deviation, its RCA documentation, remediation plan, and final status. Include evidence demonstrating compensating control operation if applicable, tickets, screenshots, monitoring records, or reports showing execution dates within the audit period. Preserve all correspondence with auditors regarding exception disclosure, their feedback, and your responses. Archive closure artifacts with verification dates and signatures. This package of proof not only demonstrates resolution, but also serves as historical reference for future audits, showing a consistent and transparent process year over year. Common pitfalls undermine even good intentions. Some teams delay reporting exceptions to auditors, hoping to fix issues quietly before disclosure. Others conduct incomplete RCAs that stop at the symptom instead of uncovering the underlying cause. Inconsistent documentation formats between domains confuse auditors and make trend tracking impossible. The remedy is standardization. One process, one template, one language for every domain. Train control owners to report early, document thoroughly, and avoid self-editing their narratives to look better. Integrity always outweighs optics. A consistent and honest exception management record is a hallmark of genuine operational maturity. Metrics and key risk indicators provide quantifiable insight into exception management performance. Track the number of exceptions per 100 controls tested, segmented by domain or trust services category. Measure mean remediation time and identify recurring bottlenecks. Record the percentage of reopened issues, cases where prior fixes failed, and aim to reduce that number each cycle. Monitor closure verification success rate to confirm that issues are not just marked complete, but independently validated. Over time, these metrics illustrate progress from reactive fixes to sustained systemic improvement. Present them quarterly to leadership and auditors to demonstrate continuous oversight. Cross-framework integration amplifies the value of every RCA and corrective action. Many of the same findings that surface in SOC 2 apply equally to ISO 27001, NIST SP 853, and internal risk registers. Linking exception data to enterprise risk management frameworks ensures that lessons learned cascade across compliance programs. An RCA addressing a failed encryption control, for instance, can inform policy revisions and design updates across privacy, security, and cloud standards simultaneously. Mapping exceptions to control redesign projects shows auditors and customers that your organization learns and adapts continuously, not in isolation. Exception handling maturity develops through recognizable stages. At the lowest level, organizations react to findings as one-off events, resolving them case by case. The next level introduces structured processes for logging, classification, and RCA documentation. Mature programs use analytics to identify high-risk controls before they fail, leveraging historical data for trend prediction. The most advanced programs aim for continuous validation and zero-exception operations, where monitoring and automation prevent failures from occurring in the first place. Maturity is measured not by the absence of exceptions, but by the discipline and speed with which they are identified, managed, and prevented from recurring. Governance reporting ensures that leadership and boards remain informed. Quarterly summaries should list exceptions, trends, and high-risk areas, supported by visual dashboards. Leadership reviews focus on systemic issues, patterns that suggest broader control design adjustments. Boards oversee any unresolved or material deviations, approving formal closure when remediation is verified. This top-down review closes the accountability loop and embeds exception management within the organization's broader risk governance model. When executives and boards are part of the closure process, exception handling transcends compliance and becomes an enterprise-wide value. In conclusion, exceptions are not failures, they are opportunities to validate the strength of your compliance program. How an organization detects, documents, communicates, and corrects deviations says more about its maturity than whether exceptions exist at all. Transparency, root cause discipline, and timely remediation preserve auditor trust and protect the integrity of the final SOC 2 opinion. Through consistent processes, automation, and governance oversight, exceptions evolve from reactive surprises into predictable, manageable components of continuous assurance. The next episode builds on this foundation, examining how to finalize reports, handle distribution, and communicate audit results responsibly to customers and stakeholders.